good. Welcome. It's my great pleasure to start this discussion. It's called Heroic Librarians Fighting Publishing Sharks. We have, it's a great honor to have four distinguished panelists, Vinciane Gaillard, Gerard Meijer, Jiří Jirát, and Martin Svoboda. I think I don't need time for introduction or speeches by myself, so I will just start immediately with the first short presentation. Maybe I will just say something about the program. The program is that there will be short presentations. Each panelist will give short presentations, and then there will be discussion. So you are welcome to ask questions. Also, people in Zoom will ask questions. And so let's start with the first presentation, and it's by Martin Svoboda.
Good afternoon, dear Mr. Chairman, dear esteemed members of the Librarians Society. Thank you for inviting me to have a couple of words to the topic. Well, I should remark at the very beginning that none of the speakers today are librarians. So the heroic librarians fighting publishing sharks, it's a battle that is taking place at other places. However, we did take part in those difficult battles. I should apologize myself, but I thought it would be useful to drop a couple of words about the environment in which we are living, because last week at the panel discussion here, I noticed to my great pleasure that finally the active people, actors of the scholarly communication were taken into discussion with those who provide them with either journals or documents, or actually providing them the opportunity to publish free of charge, which something like this doesn't exist. We already noticed that something like a free lunch doesn't exist, free publishing doesn't exist. Somebody has to pay for that. So, okay. Yeah. Well, scholarly communication in the sense of today started some 2,500 years ago, I would say, that Milesians started thinking about nature, and also later on that was the academy in Alexandria that collected all those works, and the Euclid's Stoicheia, that is elements, were valid textbook for mathematicians until not too long ago. Scholarly journals in the today's sense appeared some 350 years ago. That was by the strike of luck. It was first in France, in Paris, and about a month later in London. And the Philosophical Transactions are still alive and still functioning journal. Also the Journal des Savants, but with several interruptions caused by the French Revolution and things like that. Well, then the purpose of the communication, of the scholarly communication, was that the scholars wanted to tell their friends or their public what they discovered, and were happy to publish it. And those two journals started the original standard cycle. Scientists write, then it is passed to the revision and edition, and it is printed and sold. And time was not crucial. Then there is a couple of centuries break, and the end of the 19th century, Michael Faraday said, "Work, finish, publish." And this whip is directing us all the time since then. Publish or perish, 30s of the last century, cereals crisis, and so on. And the The essence of this is that the scholarly article and the scholarly communication turned merchandise and started to be an object of quite a good business. Today, on the legal side, there are only two businesses that are comparable to the profitability to the scholarly publishing, and this is pharmaceutical industry and arms, well, or then drug trade and trafficking. Well, I will not go into details, but what's important today, according to the STM report, Science, Technology and Medicine, it's a company that is providing very detailed reports of the market. According to them, there is today about 10,000 publishers, 48,000 peer-reviewed journals, out of which 25,000 are in Scopus and 35 are in English. So the more than 3/4 are in English language. Open access is growing by 11% as to revenues, by articles 2.5% a year, and today it makes the paid open access makes 7% of the big revenue of those $28 billion a year. So it's not big today, but it's making great progress. Yeah. Okay. Why to publish? Well, it is an objective, but as a matter of fact, it is only the purpose. The reason is that it is easy to calculate, easy to convert the number of articles into something like the quality of the science. But this is, of course, quite a nonsense. Because of the publishing is so important, then authors, in particular in the science and technology and medicine, pass with pleasure their intellectual property rights, their material rights to the publisher, and publishers are very happy to satisfy the growing needs of square meters of printed paper. 5 to 6.5% a year. This number is increasing. So the money flow looks like that. The research institute or the school buys journals for researchers from publisher, buy them equipment, pay their salaries, even they are working for publisher, reviewing or preparing article for publishing, and allow the researcher to pass the material rights to the publisher. In effect, they paid for that. It is an employee's work. But if you want to publish with Elsevier, you have to pass it, otherwise no go. And then we pay publisher that the published journals are coming back to that. Here it is in a picture. So in this moment, where is it? Somewhere here is the break. This is on behalf of author, and in that moment, publisher owns your intellectual property and is making a big business on that. Well, open science is a new approach. Well, this is not that new, but this is rather returning to the beginnings, that everything is accessible, and in the middle, in the center, is the open access to the journals and to the books and so on. Motivation, we can consider it from different points of view. As a scientist, obviously, you want to publish, you want to share what you found, but the paywall, which is constructed by the publisher, if you don't pay, you don't get access. Then it hampers the access to the research outcomes. From the society point of view, and that was the idea of many movements, that the publication is an obstacle to use the outcomes, use the invested money into research, to use it for the wealth of the society. Ethical results, yeah, if it is funded from public money, why public doesn't have a right to use it? and the economic, the steadily growing, actually exponentially growing cost of journals is untenable. Well, this is too detailed. I guess that, well, the open discussion, open access to journals and to articles and so on started almost immediately with the internet getting strength. In '91, Archive started, which is the major archive or repository for physicists, and then and so on and so on. So it's a detailed. You can see the presentation later on. I would like to stop with Scope 3, which is a sponsoring consortium for open access publishing in particle physics, which is a project started by CERN and started, well, in 2000 they started thinking about that, and actually in 2013 they signed first, and what is important, cost-neutral agreement with a couple of publishers, so that they agreed that they will pay them the same money as they received from subscriptions, and they will have a stable contract with CERN, and they will pay for free all the articles that will be published in the member partners of the scope. Well, today it is 3,000 libraries and funding agencies and 3 intergovernmental organizations like Dubna and CERN in 44 countries. And well, it's a business of about 20 million euro a year. And in 2019, American Physical Society publishing house stepped in 10 mega. And now we have third phase. And they also started with a books pilot. Nowadays, this is 113 books, and now they are collecting the recommendations. So if you are a physicist, you can also give recommendations either through us or directly to people in CERN. Maybe one remark: if you are if you publish in the open access, it's not enough to say that it is public, but you must say under which license it is. Because you might not be very happy always if somebody takes the parts of your article, of your work, and publishes it under your name. So the minimum requirement is usually the CC BY. That means that the attribution is needed, that you as author are named, or stronger ones are share alike, that the use of the date of the document could be under the same conditions like the original one. Okay, so what is the political support in the global dimensions? It is we have a UNESCO recommendations on open science, and it was adopted in 2021. In Europe, it started with the Budapest Open Access Initiative in 2002, and so on and so forth. And the major contribution was in 2018, the Plan S. In Czech Republic, we had very delayed national strategy of open access to scientific information for 2017 and to 2020. As a matter of fact, it was approved by the government only 2019, I guess, or maybe early 2020, so it didn't come in time. And nobody in this country was really not much interested, not much involved in that something is happening. The librarians were talking about open access very often, but there were no practical steps towards achieving that. Then the new Czech National Research Development Innovation Policy 2021 Plus it talks about open access in several strategic goals, but there are no provisions, no specific tasks, no money, no people, no terms. And so far, we have no Czech national open access or open science strategy, and this is a major obstacle. These are the pieces of the European scene, Plan S, Horizon Europe. Before that, it was Horizon 2010, where the open access publishing is made mandatory, and there is a, open research Europe, where there is a platform for Horizon beneficiaries who can publish there for rather reasonable publishing fee. Well, I'm from the National Library of Technology, and we provide service, and we provide what we can with all the restrictions that come from that we do not have any legal drivers to force us to provide that service. But nevertheless, our motto is library as a service. So I guess that could be enough. Maybe just to inform you, that is the spending, how much money we spend on electronic resources. This is that was bought through CzechELib, that is through our procurement of electronic journals. That was journals that were not where you can't speak about open access like Web of Science or Scopus and things like that. Here, about 50 million is APCs paid by authors. Besides that, and these are another 50 million Czech crowns is about for the journals outside of CzechELib. This is just for having some idea how developed the transformative agreements or the open access agreements in the world are. The most advanced are Netherlands, UK, Germany, Austria, and so on. That in Czech Republic here, we are somewhere here with seven agreements already reported. However, we have already, and this will talk my colleague Jiří Jirát, that we already have doubled that number. So, yeah, we have a negotiating team, and we reached agreement with those 15 companies, and yeah, you will learn more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's continue with next speaker, which is Vinciane Gaillard.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll be sharing my screen. And okay. What is it that you see? No, not the. Okay. And so now. Okay. So I think now you have everything in full screen.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. So good afternoon all. It's my pleasure being here. Although I would have loved to be in Prague with you today. It turns out that I have other commitments related to open access in Brussels tonight and tomorrow. So this is why I could not join. So my name is Vinciane Gaillard. I'm Deputy Director for Research and Innovation at EUA. EUA is the European University Association. We are the umbrella organization for universities with more than 850 members from 49 countries in Europe. Among our members, and that's important to note in this discussion, we have 35 national rectors conferences, and that includes the Czech rectors conference. So my presentation here is focused on three main quite recent publications from EURE related to open access to publications, and you will obviously get the slides after this this meeting, and the link to those publications are provided. So let's first start with the more strategic perspective. So about a year ago, we published the EUA Open Science Agenda 2025. I have to say hi to Thomas Polivka, who I think he's attending, and he's part of the EUA expert group on open science, who advised on this document. So we defined key priorities and a vision for the future of open science more generally at universities, but here I will focus on number one, the priority area number one, which is universal and perpetual open access to scholarly outputs. So you see that the vision is that by 2025, Europe's universities will be part of a scholarly ecosystem characterized by, first, academic ownership of scholarly communication and publishing. This is really important, as been mentioned, as something key to kind of regain this academic ownership. And the second element is that this would be part in a just scholarly publishing ecosystem, and I will define that in this slide, the next slides. The working definition we have for open access, well, no surprise, it's about universal and perpetual open access. It's about scholarly outputs, so not just journal publications. And so it's to provide and grant this access to both producers and users. And the idea is that the system should not have any barriers to participation. So this includes reuse through open licensing, as was just mentioned by Martin. And the way we define the ideal or the hopefully future ecosystem, it will be a just scholarly publishing ecosystem. And the definition here is that it will be a system that is transparent, diverse, economically affordable and sustainable, technically interoperable, and steered by the research community and its institutions through coordinated policies. Now, turning to the way we envisaged, and by we, it's obviously EUA and with the advice of the expert group on open science, the developments that are envisaged by 2025 is that universal and perpetual open access will be rising, let's say, will be granted to an increasing proportion of scholarly outputs, with 100% as a kind of target on the long run. Scholarly outputs will be more and more diversified and more interoperable. There will be a wider spectrum of ways to disseminate diversified scholarly outputs, and even more diversified negotiation models for contractual agreements with publishers will emerge. Research data will be increasingly important, to the extent that even for STEM fields, actually this could become even more important than the journey, the publication itself. And then, of course, we envisage that there will be more and more that institutional initiatives, infrastructures, and more important with time. Another one is related to the next generation of agreements. And I'm sorry, I'll have to stop for a second because I have to go. Apologies, I will just mute for a second. Okay, I'm back. Apologies for that. So the next generation of agreement will secure the implementation of open access and ensure transparent pricing, while also being more cost effective and entailing fewer transaction costs than the current single paper charging system. We will have regained academic ownership of the publishing ecosystem, as I mentioned. And the final part is related to more accurate and high quality open access monitoring. So this is really important to assess progress in achieving open access. So this monitoring, coupled with the assessment of the costs that are incurred by publishing in open access journals, will inform institutional and national publishing strategies and will facilitate decisions supporting new and improved fully open access publishing venues and platforms. So the challenges that have been identified in this agenda are related to the future developments as they are envisaged. So obviously there is something that is important, is that there are many different routes to open access, and so we should not fall into the trap of having one single open access route. The academic ownership I mentioned already, but this is the challenge because this will not come overnight. An important challenge as well is open peer review, high quality open peer review in this system, which will in turn have an impact on the incentive system, the scholarly and incentive system. I will turn to that later on. And then another important impact or challenge relates to equity or equality, diversity and inclusion in progressing towards open access, because of course the situation is very diverse overall. This slide I won't have time to detail, but I just wanted to mention that as part of this agenda, and for each of those three priorities that we have identified what is it that EUA will be doing. So we have action lines that have been developed, and they are structured around across the four priorities of EUA, strategic priorities that are effective advocacy, horizon scanning, European solidarity, and enabling enhanced performance. And with this, I turn to the second document, which is a follow-up report to the latest EUA Open Science Survey. So it is a focus on open access to research publications in European universities. And again, for the sake of time, I will only focus on the three recommendations here, but you have the link to the full report. The first one is that institutions should invest in creating the conditions for monitoring open access activities. So it turns out from the results of the survey that monitoring is quite good. So institutions and most of the respondents are monitoring what is published in their repositories, what is published in open access journals, as well as the costs related to that. However, there are differences across different countries and so on in terms of the development and capacity. And in addition, there is another challenge, that is that many universities and respondents mentioned that they don't have any open access targets. And some of them were saying that they are not likely to develop ones. But you need, so it's good to monitor, but you need to define targets to see how the progress is made. So in a nutshell, to assess progress in achieving open access, it is important, going back to what I was saying as part of the agenda, to have accurate and high quality monitoring of the number of open access publications, whether they are in the institutional repository or in open access journals, and their respective cost. The second recommendation is that universities should make the changes necessary to allow their researchers to comply with Plan S requirements. In this, I have to say that the respondents of this Open Science survey said that, I think it was, I'm going to my note, so 41% of the surveyed institutions were preparing for Plan S, and so those at the time of the data collection. And what is really interesting is that if we split the respondents based on whether the national funding agency has signed Plan S or not, this is a very different pattern of results that we find. So the ones like Czech Republic, where the national Czech Science Foundation has not signed, so in those countries, universities are really not likely to prepare for Open Plan S. But it's important to remind everyone that as the European Commission is a signer to a signatory of Plan S, all the researchers that would like to benefit from Horizon Europe funding will have to comply. So it's important that your universities make the changes necessary, even though the national funding agency has not signed. The third one is that universities and researchers should consider multiple paths to open access publishing. Goes back to what I was saying before. So the good thing is that from the results, the universities have engaged in various open access activities lately. It's the creation or improvement of their institutional repository, researcher and staff training, and creating or extending open science or open access policies. We have universities that have also created specific funding to support open access publishing. They've engaged in transformative agreements, created their own university presses or open access journals. So there are signs and positive signs that universities are also investing in other open access venues like Diamond Publishing. And so this is a very important in terms of developing a scholarly publishing system that is transparent, diverse, affordable, and sustainable and interoperable for all countries and institutions, irrespective of their economic situation, going back to the equity, diversity, and inclusion element that I mentioned before. Sorry. University leaders, libraries and the academic community can consult the EUA new University Open Access checklist for practical steps on how to further advance open access at institutional level. So it's a non-prescriptive document. It aims to support universities in their efforts. I'm sorry, I'm hearing someone. It aims to support universities in their efforts to build capacity and further develop their open access activities. Okay. It includes an a la carte approach whereby institutions can consider the goals and actions that make most sense in their own context and for their own specificities. And you have it here. That's only the snapshot of it to explain that the checklist covers three main goals. So you have empowerment through high-level policies and strategies, capacity building through libraries and negotiating consortia, and reinforcement of existing structures through academic community-driven infrastructures. For each goal, and of course, it's not represented in this slide, but we have a variety of possible actions. It sets out as well the respective, the rationales, proposed activities, and a discussion of their expected impact and potential pitfalls. And I will close with two mentions. First of all, as you can mention, you can see, I'm really sorry, it's very disturbing.
Sorry to interrupt you. I would like to ask Jana Jurečková to switch off her microphone. I can't mute you right now when sharing the screen, but you're interrupting the...
Thank you. I'm almost done. So the first pillar, empowerment, we have an action line that is mentioned that is related to academic assessment. And so I just wanted to say that discussions of academic negotiators for the big deals with publishers facilitated by the EUA group of negotiators, and the colleagues today are part of that group. They point to the reform of research assessment as a key enabler for universities to gain a stronger hand in negotiations. And I wanted to mention the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, COARA, as part of a big effort towards that goal. EUA has been among the ones, the driving force behind the launch of COARA last year. And the second one that I wanted to mention are under empowerment number 5 and reinforce existing structures number 1. It's about non-commercial scholar-led publishing initiatives, or Diamond OA. And here I wanted to mention the action plan for Diamond Open Access that was launched by Science Europe and Operas and other colleagues. EUA is a signatory, and the DMS project that is a European Horizon Europe funded project that EUA is a partner in. So I think that this is a way for us to kind of contribute to those elements. And I'll stop there. Very much thank you for your attention, and I leave it to the discussion.
Thank you, Vinciane. Thank you very much. And let's continue straight away with Gerard Meijer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful building, wonderful location in this special setting. I want to report about the DEAL project in Germany, so how far we got there with open access, goals, achievements, and perspectives. I'm an active physicist, I'm an active scientist myself. I've been involved in negotiations with the publishers for about 10 years now, first in the Netherlands, I'm actually Dutch, and the last years in Germany. I want to say a few things about the system. Some things will repeat a little bit what has been said before, but I think that cannot hurt. Let's first look at some remarkable features of the old subscription system, the system that we all know so very well. And the first really remarkable feature is that the publishers hold the rights of the copyrights to all articles. That's actually bizarre, but we got used to it and this was the way it is. But you have to realize this is the bedrock on which the publishing industry is based. And this is not a statement I made, this was made by the publishers themselves. Having the copyrights is the bedrock on which their industry is based. And these copyrights are really worth something. I mean, Elsevier sued SkyHub in 2017 for 100 specific articles that were put on the website by SkyHub and that were actually owned, the copyrights were owned by Elsevier. And they were awarded $15 million in damages. So copyrights are really worth something, and that's why they can do their business. So this is one thing you really want to correct. The copyrights should be there where they belong, namely with the authors. Then there was in the old subscription system the divide and conquer strategy of the publishers. The same publishers negotiated with many different clients and demanded that non-disclosure agreements are being signed. Right? So this is public money that the university spent. They signed a contract with the publishers that they will tell nobody how much they're going to spend. And individual contracts were kept secret. Individual researchers actually had no idea what it actually cost to get an article published. This was also not so important, it appeared, but now that it is open access, people do know what it costs, and you need to kind of compare these things. I'll come to that. And then people found out over the years by using the Freedom of Information Act that prices that different countries and different organizations paid to the same publishers for the same deal differed enormously, up to a factor of 3. And there was no logic in this. This was just historically done. The only thing that was common in all these deals that the different countries has, that it got more expensive by about 5% per year. But no logic, no rationale. We lived with that and we thought this was normal. We cannot accept this, right? It's clear we have to change something. So I'm not going to repeat the arguments for open access completely like they're standing here. We know all this. Arguments for open access are first, it increases the quality of research and it accelerates the scientific progress because people can read it, review it, and use it more quickly, right? This is within the academic community, but also for transfers activities outside of the academic community. It is important that the social effectiveness of publicly funded research is better used. And again, the last point goes back on the business model of publishers, which thus far was based on the rights of use, so they had the copyrights. If this is no longer the case, they will be in a different position. And we think really that it will come to a situation that they will only become publication service providers and they will be in competition with each other, which will be much better for the academics. And the publishers will be forced to improve, to better innovate, to be more transparent in cost and also cost efficiency of the system. There is wide consensus for open access, and this has all been mentioned. Berlin Declaration has been mentioned. In Germany, in the coalition agreement of the current government, it is written in the coalition agreement that they want to establish open access as standard practice. It's mentioned there twice. And the coalition agreement is something important that it's written in there. I'm also a member of the German Science and Humanities Council, the Wissenschaftsrat, and they have brought out recommendations on the transformation going from the subscription system to open access. UNESCO was also already mentioned. The question that always comes up if you go to open access is that often, why should a researcher actually pay to get published? I mean, in the past, we didn't have to pay to get published, you just submitted it. Then the reader had to pay, right? Why should a researcher pay to get published? Well, the reason is clear. The dissemination of scientific results of a research project is an integral part of that research project. Right? And the cost of scientific publications, they are only about 1 or 2% of the research cost. They should really be carried by the research funders because the cost of publication is part of the research cost, and the scientific publication should then be free and freely accessible and reusable for all readers. Right? And these costs need to be transparent. They were never transparent in the past. They need to be transparent. And another way of saying why should a researcher pay to get published is researchers write scientific articles for impact. They don't write for money, they write for impact. And it is like advertising their work to the best suited and most appropriate audience. And so in the recommendations of the Wissenschaftsrat, we go so far to say that publishing scientific results, open access, should become standard practice. That's what the coalition agreement already said. But it should be taken up in the guidelines for good scientific practice. I said that researchers had no idea how much it actually cost in the past to get a paper published. And there's a very important document that came out by the Max Planck Digital Library in 2015. It was noted before this document. But they basically looked at how much money is actually annually spent in the worldwide publishing market, looking only at the cost of publishing, not all the other data analysis. And it's about 7.6 billion euros in the year 2014. There are about 2 million papers being published per year. And that means the actual cost that we paid in the subscription system per article was 3,800 euros. And this is a number that everybody needs to know when you want to discuss open access and when you want to discuss whether open access is expensive or not. We used to pay 3,800 euros on average for all journals in the past. And we think that when we go to an open access world, it can be cheaper than that. And this is why this white paper, it's of course open access available, this white paper says there's enough money in the system. So we think that an orderly transition from subscription to open access is possible. So open access you can reach on a large scale if you change the business model of the existing scholarly journals and you spend the library budget for publishing services instead of getting reading access, so instead of getting subscriptions. And to be able to do that, the academic institutions need to set up an information budget. They need to have the means to cover the publication cost for the researchers. And this transformation will not change the system radically. I mean, for the researchers, for the journals and the publishers, the role will stay the same, but just the cash flow will be different. And to make it possible to change this cash flow at the academic side, it is extremely important that the leadership of academic institutions, and that's why I'm always happy to also speak at an audience like this, the leadership of academic institutions should take their role in this. And we also need solidarity between academic institutions. What about DEAL? So DEAL is actually an abbreviation. It stands for Deutsche Allianzlizenzen, so German Alliance licenses. The German Alliance is the alliance of all research organizations in Germany. So that's all universities. It's Helmholtz, Fraunhofer, Leibniz, Max Planck, and so on. And all these organizations have signed the Berlin Declaration and so on. And the deal negotiations were done with the three major publishers, Wiley, Springer Nature, and Elsevier. And they want to have more transparent pricing and transition to open access. So what is requested by all three publishers is a nationwide license, so for all academic institutions, also Fachhochschulen and so on, to all the electronic journals. And all publications by corresponding authors from all these institutions should be immediately open access. And we want a fair pricing, ultimately based on the number of papers being published. And this is what the deal negotiations aim for, and this is not, we're not alone in that. That's aligned with national approaches in the UK and the Netherlands and other countries. What you have to realize is so how does this actually go over the years, right? From top to bottom, there's a timeline, stages in the transition from subscription to open access, I named it. So we mainly negotiate with the publishers about what is called the hybrid journals. Hybrid subscription journals are journals that you can subscribe to and the library can then get it, but in which individual authors can also choose to have papers published open access. Okay? So I said that in the past, the subscription fees for reading access, in that case, we paid about this 3,800 euros per article. That's the one I just mentioned. When open access came out, the publishers thought this is a good business. We're going to allow people to publish open access. And they let them pay subscription fees, plus those who wanted, they had to pay in addition an article processing charge. And so that means that in principle, the publishers got 6,800 or something euros per article. And this is what in the business is known as double dipping, right? So we don't want double dipping. So then better deals were that you pay subscription fees, but you get credits for a certain number of APCs. These are offsetting models. So those that you already, the amount you already paid, you can get free articles for. And in Germany now, we're in the situation that we say we actually only want to pay for publishing of all articles. We want to maybe pay a little bit for reading, but we don't define how much that is. And we just pay Wiley and Springer Nature, we have contracts with both of them that are very similar, 2,750 euros per article. Okay, that's a lot of money, 2,750 euros per article. But it has to compare to this 3,800 that we used to pay in the past. In addition, these are all open access. So you get a lot of things extra. These are all open access articles available to everybody. This is not the end of the thing. We hope to reach the situation where we can really flip the journals and pay for open out publishing of all articles and do it this way. We also are negotiating about the pure open access articles, and therefore we negotiate nationwide discounts. So the first deal contract with Wiley, and we have a very similar deal contract with Springer Nature. These are things. So it's open access publishing of an uncapped number of articles in Wiley hybrid and pure gold open access journals by basically all German institutions. All publishing fees are centrally paid, so the author doesn't pay anything. So it's just centrally paid for. And in the end, the publishers get these 2,750 euro per article. And for the pure gold journals, we get 20% discount on the list APC. Of course, the copyrights stay with the authors. with a CC BY license. And there's read access and permanent access for all deal participating institutions, including all the back files from 1997 on. What's also new, the agreement as such is open access available. The agreement, the contract is published on the website. And you can see the contract and all the details of the contract on this website, both for Springer Nature and for Wiley. What did that result in? So we have these contracts now for several years. We have good numbers from 2021. The numbers for 2022 are not complete yet. And these two contracts, for instance, led to 27,000 open access publications from Germany in 21, divided between 10,800 by Wiley and the rest by Springer Nature. Most of them in hybrid journals, also part in open access journals. So much more visibility for German research, because this is available to everybody, but also improved access for German researchers, because now they can read everything, and that leads to enormous increase of downloads of articles, both those articles that were closed before and closed and open articles. So this is really a big success, I would say. What needs to be realized is to get this really done, and this is in the recommendations of the Wissenschaftsrat, is that the university leadership, they really need to take their role in this. This is beyond what librarians and libraries can do. Libraries can use some of their library budget to be used for covering the publication cost, but also some parts of the research budget need to be used for that. And so university leadership needs to set this up and needs to make sure that to cover these publication costs for its researchers, this budget is available. Again, it's about 1 to 2% of the total research cost. And they need to coordinate the setting up of such a central information budget. The leadership also needs to support and drive this transition to open access. And don't forget, this is also politically demanded, and there will be no way back. Nobody will say we go for less transparency, we go for contracts that are locked. There's no way back. We're going in this direction, and we have to do this together, not only as institutions within a country, but also as different countries. We have to act together. And that's why I'm also happy to have been invited here to this meeting and to give this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let's start the last presentation of Jiří Jirát.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. I think I will have many follow-ups, so it's great. I had Mr. Meijer before me. I would like to briefly inform you about what's going on here. And if you see this sign, it's a flame, it means this slide is intended to start heated discussion. So watch for the symbol, please. So first of all, the political background for open access, for negotiations, for years there was nil, nothing. There's no one interested. And the first question we received from the publishers, from Elsevier, Wiley Springer, do you have any national mandate? And we started, it should be here, we are working on it, and very tough start of negotiation for everybody on our side. And second aspect, we are talking, or the name of the presentation is the sharks of publishing, but these are not just Elsevier, Wiley and Springer, but there are learned societies who benefit a lot, and like the chemical societies, the physical societies, they are not cheap, you know that, because you pay them. And many learned societies, they have their journals landed on Elsevier Science Direct platform or at Wiley, like the German Chemical Society also. So the money flow is not so simple, I would say. And for some societies, the income from the journals is substantial. It's running their programs, educations, and social events, and so on. So even the learned societies might not be always motivated to welcome open access, because it can cause a disruption. So This is the list of publications by corresponding also from the Czech Republic. It's filtered by the grant agency acknowledgement, which is, let's say, the crème de la crème of all the publications in Czech Republic. And the yellow bars, they show the transformative agreements we have signed recently, or we are going to sign tomorrow or in upcoming weeks. So you can see we have skipped just Elsevier because we need really broad political backup to start discussions with Elsevier. Without that, that doesn't make sense. And I think Germany can tell us a lot about Elsevier no deal situation. So we really try to start with the most important publishers, and as you can see, Springer, Wiley, and then ACS, RSC. We skipped APS. It's also tough to talk. IOPP and OUP, Cambridge, and Sage. Well, IEEE. We have just recently failed to reach an agreement. So these are the most important publishers when it comes to publishing, to the authors. And now let's look at how the consortia look like. Sorry for Czech description. I didn't dare to translate the status. These are number of institutions involved in the consortia. So Elsevier, the largest consortium. And as you can see, the public universities and Academy of Sciences are the dominant institutions in these groups. But now the money. I think it's a similar picture in all countries. It's Elsevier, number one, then Wiley, Springer, comparable, and then IEEE, ACS, OUP, RSCR, and AIP are not the smallest ones. So the learned societies are also important sharks or smaller sharks in the sea. So that's what you pay from your budgets for the agreements. I would like to reiterate this picture. So it's the spending in 2019 for journals via CzechELib, and then APCs paid in the wild. But if you look at the APCs spent, these are results from the national survey. There is almost exponential growth in spending. And in 2020, the APCs in the wild were at the 30 or 40% of the subscription of the journals through CzechELib. So there was some delay because the research council was changing, and we are now eagerly waiting for the data to be delivered from your institutions, and let's see what the development will be. So it's not negligible amount anymore, and we should think about it. It goes from the research budget, from the grants. And our aim is to stop the growth of the hybrid. That's the aim of the transformative agreements, and to stop the double dipping and the pouring of money outside without control. Briefly, the agreements we have just signed or negotiated. Wiley, I think it's a showcase agreement, thanks to Mr. Hocek, who suddenly said, well, everybody was saying someone should do something with open access, and then Mr. Hocek said, well, I will do it, so let's start. And the parameters of the Wiley agreement, I would say they are, if you compare the par fee, we have almost the same par fee as Germany. We have the database model, so we can't do it better. I mean, we don't have the nationwide deal because that was the first thing Wiley said, no, deal is special, please don't try to do it this way. So, but we are very satisfied with the outcome. Springer is an example where 1/3 of the institutions, they told us, well, we don't want open access so much because it could mean a higher price increase. And we have come to some compromise, ACS, RSC, IIP. Some of the agreements are uncapped. It means there is unlimited publishing, no limits. And then the smaller ones, let's say, who are here. So I think you can recognize your favorite publishers here. The experience in 2018, Germany was preparing for the OA 10 or 15 years, I think, if I remember what my colleagues told us. In 2018, government was just silent about open access. Our funders, they were not interested at all, scientists too, and the librarians, they were seeing it's either gold or green, and green is really better. So there was even no, let's say, support from the libraries because they preferred the green route instead of seeing these routes as, let's say, complementary. There was no support for the OA transformative agreements. And you need the bibliometric analysis. We started working on the analysis, and I would like to publicly thank especially Max Planck Digital Library, our friends in Munich, who really helped us extremely, and our colleagues from EU consortia and also EUA helped to connect us with our peers in Europe, which is extremely important for us. So we got a lot of workshops and mentoring and help. And in 2022, suddenly, in two big programs, you know, the XLS and the OP Jan Amos Komensky program, suddenly Ministry of Education decided immediate open access is mandatory, and we have a storm of requirements and demands. We need tokens, we want open access. And if we had not started on our own without any support in 2018, we can't sign so many agreements this day. So it's something we should change here, and we need the support from all levels, also from top. But the cooperation within the EU consortia was detrimental to the success. Was key to success. What we can see, Vinciane has mentioned the Quora Declaration, and we have many signatories here in Czech Republic, but when it comes to the practice, you can see when there is a shortage of tokens or APCs covered, then suddenly the impact factor quartiles jump in so quickly, and even the signatories of Quora, they ask us, please give us the list of journals divided by the quartiles so we can decide who can use the tokens, which goes, I think, directly against the agreement. That's our experience from the Taylor-Francis transformative agreement. And this is just the, let's say, listing of the journals. On the y-axis is the percentile of the journals, so the higher the better, and the red side shows the corresponding authors are from Czech Republic, and the orange show the corresponding author is not from Czech Republic. So we have shortage, quite limited number of tokens with Springer and with Taylor-Francis, so it's very likely that these journals in the third and fourth quartile at Taylor and Springer won't get approval on their institutions. If it is right or not, that's a matter of discussion if this approach is something appropriate. And when it comes to deal negotiation, many transformative models are, let's say, mature, or they were explored or set by Netherlands, and then fortified by Germany and UK, and adopted by the Scandinavian countries, Ireland, and even our peers like Poland and Hungary were before us. So the publishers have their models set, the parameters are fine-tuned, and the room for making some miracles is zero for us. So we are trying to do the best in the already existing transformative models, like Springer Compact is, let's say, model which is universal almost, and you can do only a limited amount of things in this. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's worse. And we can see more and more publishers who suddenly embrace the open access because they see there is it's not a threat to them, it's an opportunity, and it's also a marketing. We are Planck compliant, and our articles are Planck compliant, so publish with us. And now something, again, for flame discussion. if you will give the researchers the choice where to publish, the ORE platform, the new platform where the APC will be very, very affordable, let's say, then Nature Communications, and then +1, these 3 mega platforms. And so the question is where the author will go and why. And if we can threat the publishers that our authors will leave their prestigious hybrid journals, which have, you know, the community and impact factor. So that's also something we can't play probably. And that's just for the last, for the discussion, the ESEC analysis, the growth of publishers, we can see very wild fluctuations and development in the market of publications. One graph at the end, one last remark which follows up the. I like very like the information budget which Professor Meijer has mentioned. What we have faced as an internal struggle. Many institutions, Academy of Sciences institutes and universities, they say, yes, the proposal looks good. You combine the subscription plus some surplus which covers the already spent APCs. Yes, in total we understand we would save the total money, but we have central budget and we have the grant money, and the grant money are not touchable. It's another pocket, so we know we will spend more in total, but it won't be from the central budget, which is used for the electricity and gas and heating and salaries. And this is what we have heard on several occasions at several institutes. Even the managers, they recognized that the total, it would be convenient. They said, well, the only option is to increase the overhead costs. Oh, my dear, that will cause a revolution at our institute, so we don't know how to do it. So let's the authors fight themselves and pay the APCs if they want open access, and we don't want the transformative agreement. So that's something we need to change, and this will help to save public money in total. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And so let's start with. So these were the presentations we saw. 4 presentations. Let me thank to the speakers again. And now we start discussion. So in fact, let me just start. Since I have the microphone, I will ask the first question, and it is for Vinciane and for Gerard. It is basically about something which was implicitly or explicitly mentioned by all 4 of you, and it is that nowadays publication really is used for evaluation of science as kind of certification of quality, and that Vinciane mentioned that one of the priorities is ensuring high quality open peer review. So the question is whether there is some concrete mechanism and in the European level. And let me ask Gerard closely related question, and it is that in the text which I got from Gerard of the German Science and Humanities Council, which I actually forwarded to all members. I find it very, very interesting and thorough. And there is one of the principles of evaluation of science that evaluation should not depend on media, on the quality of journal, but should really solely depend on the quality of the publication, which somehow also reflects something like open peer review. So, so again, the question would be if there is some concrete mechanism. So maybe Vinciane, can you start and then?
Yes, thank you. So indeed, it has been identified as a major challenge and let's say the new ways, the new system, because we hear from well, the first thing that I should mention to clarify is that our members are not individual researchers. Our members are institutional leaders of universities or universities as institutions. However, we also hear from the research and innovation community that there is a resistance to change and a resistance from researchers to new models. If you look at open access journals, for instance, a major criticism we get is, well, they don't trust the peer review system. They consider that the quality of publications in those journals is lower than the quality of publications from, let's say, more traditional and high reputation journals. And so this is a major element that we have to consider. So this is related to the quality of peer review overall and in the workflow of the journals. Now, in our agenda, we also mentioned the importance of open peer review. And here again, there are many different challenges. One is if you look for something that is an open system at all the levels of the chain, let's say, there are many pros for open peer review, because then providing and delivering open peer reviews can be recognized as part of your contribution to science. And this links back to the discussion on research assessment. But on the other hand, there are many difficulties, because we can understand that if all the names are fully disclosed, well, we could have kind of retaliation or problems of the reputation. The peer review provided by a more junior researcher may not be considered of the same quality of a more senior researcher. You know all this. So this is a very tricky discussion. And going back and linking back to the discussion on the reform of research assessment, I have to say that as part of the major challenges in terms of this reform, I will also put in the chat, if that's of interest, the link to the COARA website where you have this agreement on reforming research assessment. One of the commitments, and one of the first of commitments, is that it's the idea with this reform is to recognize all the different contributions to research and that researchers do to research. And so that includes indeed performing peer review. Another very important commitment in that agreement is that research assessment should be done primarily based on qualitative evaluation, for which peer review is central, supported by responsible use of quantitative indicators. But a comment we received very often is, okay, it's all fine in principle, but how do you manage that? And that goes back to the discussion on the numbers of publications that are out every single year. So in Martin's presentation, it was more than 4 million articles a year, if I noted well. It was a bit lower in the figures from Gerard, that from the NDPL article, the white paper 2015. But overall, we all see that there is a huge growth of how many publications you have in the system, which makes it completely not workable to have peer review as the main way to evaluate research and researchers. And so overall, linking the whole thing, the idea is that the system as a whole should go to more is less. So we should have less publications in the system, because if we change the whole way, the whole process and the ways researchers and research are assessed, there is no incentive to do the salami slicing of publications. So to have, instead of one big consistent and sound publication, you make 3 out of them because it's good for your CV. So there are less people who will be needed to do the editorial support and then the peer reviewing, because you will only have like 1 paper in the end and not 3, or 1, let's say, research outputs and not just a paper. So the thing is that what is at the same time very enthusiastic in this whole discussion, but at the same time very challenging, it is, of course, that it's all part of a system, and that research assessment and scholarly communication in the future, or scholarly communication, go together and hand in hand. So if you change one aspect, it will have consequences on the rest, and at the same time everything is very slow. So we are talking about like a long-term change and long-term transition, but overall, the idea would be that we go, we kind of depart ourselves from the publish and perish, and we go to the more is less, and more is less in terms of quantity, but higher quality overall.
Thank you. And Gerard?
Yeah, I think we all agree that in the end, we don't know many better things than peer review. So experts just have to evaluate, and articles should be evaluated on the content of the article and not on the venue in which they have been published. And I think we all agree on that. We just don't always do this. So I think all institutions have signed the San Francisco DORA Declaration, the Declaration on Research Assessment, in which it's said that the journal impact factor, for instance, should not be used as a surrogate for the quality of the research. But even though people all sign these things, it is still very often used. And academics have to solve this issue by themselves. We will have to come up with a better system. And what I find nice about the Quora coalition right now is basically it is work in progress. It is asking partners in different countries to come up with maybe a better system and to inform each other how this might be improved. I also want to say that in the end, I mean, so the publishers, if you negotiate with publishers, they will tell you very, very quickly that you should work on the assessment and the incentive system, also because they want to, they don't want you to think too much and too quickly transfer to an open access system, right? And so they do that also to distract. I agree, we have to work on this incentive and reputation system. I welcome Quora. I think that's the right way to just learning by doing. I think there's not much better than peer review. And in the end, I think there will always be iconic journals that will be around. I mean, every researcher wants to publish their article in the best visible and recognized journal, right? So for the appropriate audience. So that will always be the case. There's an important difference if you go to open access, is in the end it's always the quality of the editorial board. It's to ensure that what is being published in the journal is high quality. In an open access world, it is more important than ever to have a very clear separation between the publisher and the editorial board. And they should, because they have different goals. The publishers want to make money. And if they publish more articles, they make more money. But the editors must have as a goal that only the highest quality research gets published in their journal. And there must really be a clear separation between them, and even be kind of a conflict situation between them. Because editors and the editorial boards have a very important task there. It's up to the academics to establish, to make sure that the quality control is there. It is also up to academics to come up with better systems to the research assessment and so on. And I think right now we don't have much better than peer review. Open peer review might have some advantages. It needs to be seen.
Thank you very much. So let's continue with questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jan Terlifaj. I'm a mathematician. Thank you for your presentations, especially for this last comment of Gerhard Meijer. First, one technical remark on the presentation of Jiří Jirát. There was this list of publishers with a big chunk of Elsevier and so on. There was also the MDPI, which we discussed a week ago here as a kind of counterexample of good publishing. So I hope there's no contract with them. This is in mathematics, they have a journal that has 800 editors with 8 chief editors, etc. So it's really, from the point of view of math community and also official statements of the Academy of Science here, etc., a corrupt thing. So I hope this is not there in the contract. That's just a technical thing, yeah.
It was marked in green, it's OA publisher, and we do not have any agreement with OA publisher so far. So it was just listed to be seen as the number 6 or 5 in number of publications. We have no agreement with that.
Thank you. And the other comment is that as a mathematician, the process that we publish, not only me, but many colleagues of mine, we first submit a paper, and at the same time we put it on the archive that was mentioned here. And that's makes it protected and also visible to the local community. So what we expect from the journal that we send it to is a very good refereeing report, and the better the journal, the better report, and the better the visibility for the grant agencies, etc. So it's, as I agree that the reporting, so the referee activity is very important. That's the basic thing that the journal can add to the value of the paper, which is already available online and visible to the community, and moreover protected by the date of the submission to the archive. So that's, and it seems that as the number of papers is growing, it seems that some of the communities or societies like the AMS, for example, American Math Society, they see there are too many papers, so they introduce now some of the top journals become their new diamond access journals, which are sponsored by some millionaires in the US, and they strive to be the best journals in the area. So coming back to the old model, few papers but very good ones. So I think diamond access, it's like a hope. We also had this discussion a week ago. So I was a bit surprised in the material that Martin provided us from Gerard, that diamond access was mentioned as a kind of too small and related to Southern America, Central Europe. But I don't think it's the case. It's actually a way maybe to go back to the old good times. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, if I may immediately react to that. I agree with many things you have said. So the MPDI, so there are several predator journals, and predator journals you get when indeed the editorial board and the publisher are too closely connected, or even the same, or when it's fake editing. This is an issue with open access. I point out that predator conferences have been around already for a long time and are still there, and I guess we all get invitations to come to Dubai to give a presentation and so on, right? So it's nothing new in that sense. Diamond open access, yes, if somebody else wants to pay for it, it's great, right? I mean, so we all agree. In fact, we see, and this is why we report upon that, like in this paper of the Wissenschaftsrat, we see that it is most often smaller journals, and it's in specialty, and exactly the points you mentioned. I would argue actually that the way we have solved this issue in Germany, the deal contract, for the authors, it is the same as Diamond Open Access. It is the same as Diamond Open Access because the authors don't have to pay anything. And it's basically handled by their institutions. And they don't even see that. They don't even have to see the details of how the institutions handle that. And it's like, this is like an external funder would do this, right? So effectively, I would argue that in the deal contracts in Germany, it is like Diamond Open Access. I would strongly support, everybody would support Diamond Open Access, but I think it is maybe unlikely that it's going to cover all fields. But there where it can be done, it should be done. I also agree with your point on the archive. I know in mathematics, also in physics, we also put everything on the archive, and that has a very good function. We really see now a problem that there are too many publications. There are just not enough reviewers. And the pool of reviewers that you can send an article to is not growing with the same speed as the number of articles is growing. And I don't want to say anything negative, but there are some countries that you cannot send an article to be reviewed because you might get it back with a different author list.
Thank you very much. And Vinciane has a comment.
Yes, thank you. I think it's on the diamond model, let's say. From a study that EUE commissioned on the future of scholarly publishing, and that was published in July 2020, if I'm not mistaken. The idea was to kind of do a scenario identification for the future of scholarly publishing. And in that discussion, we had all the actors involved in the scholarly communication ecosystem that contributed to the exercise, including publishers, including researchers and institutional leaders. It turns out that in terms of the future as it was envisaged, the current, well, what is no longer the only system, which is like subscription model, was considered, okay, this will no longer be a part of the future. The future is transformative agreements and beyond. And in the beyond, there were two scenarios for platform journals, let's say, and platforms where to publish. And there were two scenarios. One was that it was owned by publishers, and the other was owned by academic, or like the community, let's say. And those two scenarios were very considered as likely to be organized in the future. Of course, the one that was owned by the community was considered as most desirable by, let's say, our respondents, but it was considered indeed, at least short term, as less likely. So in terms of likelihood and, let's say, feasibility, at least short term, the platform scenario, but platforms that would be owned by publishers, was considered the most likely scenario, at least like midterm, short-term, midterm. Although there is a desire to get something that would be owned by the community. So I think that there is also, I hear what you were saying, in terms of it's Latin America that was mentioned. Indeed, we have a lot to learn from them on Diamond, because they've been doing that for a while already. And the discussion is really growing. There is a momentum now on Diamond. It's building up. It's not for the next 5 years, that's clear, not even possibly for the 10 next years in terms of the likelihood, but there are, let's say, it's work. There is work done on this at the moment.
If I may react to that, yes, I agree there is, but if you count the number of Diamond journals, it's quite a lot. If you count the number of Diamond articles in all those Diamond journals, it's a very small fraction. And so again, if anybody else wants to pay for it, I think we would all be happy. But the question is how likely is that that's going to happen? On the platform journals, there's a lot of discussion on platform journals. I think it should not be, and in a way, an archive you could also say is kind of a platform pre-publication. But I think in the end, many scientists connect themselves to a certain community. And this community is reflected in a certain editorial board of a selected set of journals. And so I am not so sure. I do see things get more article-based, but I do not see that the journals as such are going to completely disappear and that platform journals can cover that. But it might be different. In different fields, it might be different.
Thank you very much. Let's, Michal Hoce.
Okay, so I'm Michal Hocek, I'm a chemist. I will also follow something that we already mentioned last week in the other discussion, that you mentioned that there is enough money in the system and we just redistribute it. But I do not necessarily agree that it is the same money from the same sources, because it may be true for like academic researchers who read a lot and publish a lot, and for them this may work. But there is also a lot of like industrial researchers. They read a lot, but they do not necessarily publish a lot. And in the previous subscription system, like all the big companies, especially in my field of chemistry, all the big companies subscribed all the journals, so they contributed money to the system. Now in let's say pay for publication, they will not pay. And they will read for free. So I feel that this money will be missing in the system. And the question is whether there is a way to make them contribute to the system so that it is sustainable. So can you comment on this?
I'm first of all, I'm very happy you bring this point up, because it's a very important point and needs to be discussed, and it's even more important than you might think. So it's, on the one hand, it is those companies or also state libraries that don't publish, but that did contribute to the system in the past. The percentage of that differs per publisher, differs per country. In Germany, for Elsevier, it's 11%. And Elsevier also argued to us that income is going to disappear, and we basically said you now have 40% profit, and then you have 29% profit, so you can live with that, right? So that's one line of argumentation. The other is that, and a more serious one, is that there is enough money in the system, but in the open access system, the money is not at the same location. It is not at the same universities. Research-intense organization and research-intense institutions that publish more will have to pay more because in the end it's per article based. And less in research-intense organizations will have to pay less. So there's going to be a redistribution of money. So we see that the Wiley and Springer Nature deal, for Germany as a whole, we save money. We save money relative to what the libraries paid before, not even counting the APCs in the wild that were also mentioned, that we don't really know how much it was, right? But not even counting those. In addition, you have to see, we have now for the 5th year the Wiley contract, the prices didn't increase, APC stayed flat. They get more income when more articles get published, but other than that, the price stayed flat. And so this redistribution issue between universities and also between industry or state libraries is really a very serious issue, and really is problematic right now in this transformation phase. If you are in the end phase, probably it's all clear, but in this transformation phase, it is problematic. And so we're in this strange situation that, for instance, in Germany, everybody agrees open access is better than closed access. Everybody agrees transparency is better than having things non-transparent. Everybody agrees that if we all have made this switch, it will, for Germany as a total, will be cheaper than before. But on the way there to that road, some need to pay more. And if those who need to pay more refuse immediately to pay more, and those who can pay less immediately want to cash in on that, we're never going to make the change. And this is really a serious issue, and we underestimated that issue. We now in Germany got the state libraries so far to leave the money in the system. Okay, so we made an agreement with the state libraries that they say we leave the money in the system, we're not going to take it out, we're going to use it to support smaller universities, to do archiving, to do other things. And this is what on one of my slides I said that I don't know how I phrased it, but I said that we really need some good collaboration between the different universities or also companies in a given country if you want to get this accommodated, and that needs to be done. And that's why there needs to be, it helps enormously when there's a political drive, when there's a political clear direction on where you want to go and want to go there together. If right now in Germany, for instance, the universities in Munich, they complain that they will have to pay too much. They publish much more, and they see their cost for publication double. And they find this is not correct. You have to realize that the new system is not correct. It was the old system that was not correct, right? The cost of publication is part of the research project, of the research cost. And they should just cover it. Those where the costs are, they should just cover it. And the old system was not correct. But it's an extremely important point. I'm very happy you bring it up. It is important for the companies, which in some countries might be a big fraction. I don't know, in Czechia it might be a bigger fraction than in other countries, but also between institutions. There will be a big difference between institutions.
Thank you very much. And there is a follow-up question.
Ivo Starý, chemist. We are discussing just aspects like cost of publications and fairness, etc. But there are also, I would say, political and strategic issues. And if we used to say that the open access system is very fair, no doubt about it, but not in all aspects, because actually in the world, the open access system was designed for ideal world, but in the world there are countries which are toxic or potentially toxic, and very important countries, and we use public money just to supply them with all information we discover absolutely for free. And my question is it fair for us?
Maybe this question somebody else wants to answer first.
If I may comment, I will skip the toxic countries. I will mention the underdeveloped or let's say the global south countries. So that's the new issue which is circulating now in the OA 2020 is the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusivity. So the APC is flat fee for the whole world, but of course it is set by the Springer, which is based in Heidelberg, and by Elsevier, which is based in Amsterdam, and such companies which are based in the Western world. And the APC is, of course, if we pay the APC, I mean in Czech Republic, our strengths compared to Germany, when we compare the GDP part which goes to the R&D compared to Germany, we pay 8 times more compared to money which flow into the research. That's the reality. I mean, if we are comparing the money invested into R&D. So, and it's Europe, and we are very close. And then, of course, South Africa or Africa at all, it's not fair to them, I mean, to pay 3,000 euros. And I think the people in the OA 2020 movement, they are trying to tackle the issue, to address this issue, how to make the either waivers or discounts based on GDP. So I have skipped the toxic countries like Iran, North Korea. Sorry, that's not my. But that I think the issue is recognized that it's not fair. If you look around the world, that it's not fair. And the sanction countries, I don't know what to say. I think if you look at Sci-Hub, even the copyright have not stopped the countries to get to the information. That's absolutely clear. So it's if you recognize copyright, it works. If you don't recognize copyright, there is no protection. I mean that's the most straightforward answer.
Thank you. Does somebody else want to comment? If not, then...
Well, I just want to say that I still would dare to say that the fact that we share scientific information the way we do and the way we can do that in open access better and make it available to more people is in the end a good thing. If you can have all kind of CC licenses. The CC licenses were mentioned, right? If you don't want that it's not being used for commercial things, you can have a CC&C non-commercial license and so on. Again, if people don't want to follow these copyrights or respect it, they can do whatever they want. I think it is good that we share this information. There will certainly some research being going on in all kind of countries that is not being dealt with like this. But I'm talking about academia, I'm talking about publicly funded research institutions, and then I think it's overall a good thing.
Thank you. And Vinciane?
Yes, I can only confirm and remind that it's as open Now, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So, for certain topics or certain documents, but these are likely to be classified. There is the possibility to keep them open and to keep them closed. So this is already a possibility, but the general rule should be to keep it open, because the benefits of the open knowledge sharing far outweigh the risks of keeping them closed.
Thank you very much. Let's continue with
Pavel Jungberg, chemist. So you all brought very convincing arguments for the open access compared to the old system, and I totally agree. But sometimes the devil is in the detail, and it has been already addressed by you, Gerard, to think that the old subscription system pushed the journals for quality, because good journals were then bought by libraries, while the new system really pushes for publishing more and more papers. And you, Gerard, suggested this is how we distinguish predatory journals from good journals, that there's this separation between editorial boards and the management. I can confirm, as a recently retired editor of a high-quality journal, that it's not so simple. And even high-quality publishing houses do have this connection between management and editors. There is this influence, and there is this pressure for publishing more, and I don't see the old pressure for publishing higher quality. And just saying, you know, wishful thinking that we should all aim at having independent editorial boards, I don't think that's enough. There should be more. So I'm asking you, I mean, is there anything more we can do?
Thank you very much, Pavel. Happy to see you and meet you here. So in some fields, in selected fields, actually editors and editorial boards have done exactly this. There was linguistics is one of these examples, which is a pretty close-knit community worldwide. And these linguistics, they had a whole email list of all the, I don't know, 40,000 linguists or something that there are worldwide. And they had a top journal in the field, Lingua, and Lingua was owned by Elsevier. And the editorial board was really unhappy with how Elsevier did this. They wanted actually to make the journal open access. Elsevier wanted to do that for a ridiculous amount of money. And then they said, we're just not going to do it. And then they, as a whole editorial board, they decided to say, we're gonna leave Elsevier. We're gonna ask who wants to publish us, right? They found another publisher doing this. Unfortunately, they couldn't take the name with them, because the name belongs then to Elsevier. So then it went from Lingua, it went to Glossa, so from Latin to Greek, right? So now it's a journal, Glossa. And basically the whole authorship and the whole field moved from Lingua to Glossa. Lingua's dead. And Glossa is now open access publisher for 500, it was originally, I think now it's 700 euros per article. So it can be done. I realize it is certainly not easy. There's a big change though going on that I would say 10 years ago most of the publishers were basically against open access. They would also not support it. Right now there's a big change. Wiley strongly supports this, right? Also Springer Nature. Elsevier still of the big publishers less than the others. But they see they cannot stop this movement. And it will go in that direction. And I think it is very important that the scientists keep on doing their role as editor and keep on doing it very serious and really indeed fight with the publishers. And when you don't agree, then you have to leave, right? But this is the only way it can be done. So I don't have a clear recipe, and I do understand the problem. And I do understand that you say every now and then it sounds a little bit like wishful thinking. And I agree a little bit with that, and it takes time. But we are now in a situation where, so Max Planck has been really pushing for open access, right? And for transformative agreement. 90% of all Max Planck publications are open access right now. And so you can really do it.
Thank you very much. Martin, Svoboda.
Well, I wanted just to comment on the lingua to glossa conversion. That is a nice example of a role of personality in history. There was some Johann Rorik, who was a chief editor of Lingua, and he took over from Elsevier, and he himself made it. So how many people like that are here? Yeah? So if there is one per topic or per some area of publication, then it's quite easy. And then another example of that is the Scope 3. If the director of CERN in this time who decided, well, we took it over, we take it over, we simply buy out the necessary number of publications from Springer, Elsevier journals, either cover to cover or just a part of it, and they did it. Yeah? And it works. It works since 2013.
Thank you.
Years, actually. But there are not so many examples, and it works only for some limited topics.
Thank you. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, so I'm Jiří Jirát, I'm from artificial intelligence field, and I have 3 comments. The first one relates to the deal, and I would ask the Czech guys to use this for promotion of open access. So don't say the global south should have access. The main message is we can do this for the same amount of money, or even cheaper. If you say we can do this cheaper, then in the end we can somehow redistribute the money that went to libraries, universities, Academy of Sciences. So just argue economically. I think that would work here. The second thing about is fairness. So you had in your presentation some 4 reasons for open access. So all my papers are open access, so I'm in favor, but they were not fully correct. So for instance, you say someone pays, he should have access. But maybe European taxpayer pays, and why should Samsung have access? I was working in Samsung, they say, we love your open access, we'll use these results and then pay, and you will pay us for the phones that use these results. So for instance, we had COVID and we had IDs, and you can say, well, everybody with a national ID will have access. So you can have, so the European taxpayer paid for this, he has access. Yeah? It's not necessarily true that all the Chinese companies and Samsungs and so on need to have access. And the third thing is coming to the evaluation. So I disagree with the San Francisco thing on the impact factor of the journal, because what is happening? If you want to do peer review, even if you are the largest and best university in the Czech Republic, like Charles University, they will never get the experts on that particular mathematical paper. They will never get them. Whereas the top-level journal will get them. So maybe, and this is for you in the deals, maybe you can say, well, part of the deal will be that I can reuse the reviews. Because this impact factor is a proxy for saying, a good impact factor has a good pool of reviewers and good editor board. That will select the experts exactly for your paper, and that will produce reviews which actually lead to acceptance, and therefore this must be good because good reviewers said, yes, this is good. If you could see the reviews, you can use sort of open, well, maybe not open, restricted access for evaluation purposes to reviews done at journals that have some sort of agreement with almost government-level consortia, and then it would work. Yeah? So, because instead of impact factor, use the particular reviews for this, for people which will stay anonymous, but they are the experts, because the editor board have experts in many fields, and then they select the super experts in the reviews. You can never do this at an institutional review level. So I had 3 things, and
yeah, so maybe I start with the last one. I mean, journal impact factors were originally composed for librarians to make them help decide what journals they should have in their portfolio, right? And the journal impact factor a priori doesn't say anything about each individual article in there. It is like evaluating the quality of a car by looking at the garage and that it's standing in, right? This is the example that people always give, right? Of course, I mean, what these journals do with higher impact factors, they also put more editorial effort in. And they often have indeed more reviews that you can use. So there is some. Am I misinterpreting?
No, I'm also. Here you can use this.
No, so I agree with you. I understand all that. I'm also an editor-in-chief of a major Springer journal. The only pressure they put on us is to make sure that the impact factor of the journal stays high. Nothing else, which is actually okay. And I understand that. But I'm saying what I'm saying. You don't have to persuade me. that why should I use average number of citations rather than particular number of citations? Because the mathematicians say, well, in our field it will take 20 years before the citations will show up something because everything is very long-term, low burn. And I'm saying there is a merit in using the impact factor because it's highly correlated with good reviewing standards, highly correlated, I would say, with the exception of game people who, okay, I'm not after people who play games. Of course, you can artificially boost things. And maybe we could turn it into useful things, push journals which we agree upon to have open access and these transformative deals to release journals for evaluation, because that would be okay. But there is a reason with the mathematicians. You can't use citations, you can't use review because you will not get the experts. So what else is left?
I cannot really give you a clear answer, but what I can tell you is that when we have a lot of meetings with publishers making these contracts, and we discuss a lot about these things, right? And we discuss a lot in how far reviews can be used. There are these cascading journals that they use to use reviews moreover and so on, which always has the big disadvantage that it stays within the same publisher, right? So there are tricky things about that. Maybe we should discuss this separately.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting. There will be there will be possibility after 6 when they discuss in the neighboring room. But let's continue with questions here.
Well, first I'm from Charles University, and I have a small side remark that I'm really worried about making open access part of the assessment of our work. Well, I think it will, if it happens here, it will have really awful results. Manipulating and trying to find a way how to get open access. We wouldn't be supported to publish in open access, etc. But this is just a side remark. I'm really curious about the ERIH, the European Research, what was it? ERIH. It was a system of selecting best journals. Well, I was on one of the panels deciding about the best journals in certain fields 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I wonder what happened to this system and whether it is somehow related to the open access exercise.
I'm not sure if I can give an answer to your last question. I want to make one point very clear, though. I might have been misunderstood. It is never the idea that open access is valued higher in any assessment or whatever, right? It is just very often that if you talk about open access, that the discussion comes up, what to do with these iconic journals and what to do with reputation and so on. And because open access journals, many of them are new journals in the field, they don't have a journal impact factor and so on, right? So in that context, that is often discussed. It is never, ever intended that in an evaluation, publishing open access is considered better or whatever than anything else. Not at all, right? So that I want to make clear. I don't know about the other system, but maybe
Vinciane, do you want to comment on the second part of the...
ERIH, we call it ERIH in Czech.
No, actually my comment would be on the first part. So although it is clear that the intrinsic value
Vinciane, we cannot hear you. Something happened. Say something. Something happened. We cannot hear you. 1 minute, 1 minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now yes, perfect.
No.
Perfect. It's all right. Now we can hear you. Yes.
Now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So what I was going to say relates to the first part. It's indeed By no means there is the idea that an open access publication would be of higher value than a paywalled contribution. However, and that again also it's important to be clear, in the context of COARA, the reform of research assessment, it is very clear that the intention is to recognize and reward, as part of the research assessment, all the different contributions that are made in the research endeavor. And things are now the almost sole proxy for contributions, for the evaluations, is publications and the metrics related to publications. It has nothing to do with the document itself and the value of this document. With the COARA and this reform of research assessment, the idea is to recognize the diverse activities and practices as well as outputs to research. And open access, open science actually more generally, as a way to conduct research is part of something that should be more recognized in research assessment. So it's not about the value, the intrinsic value of any specific research output, but it's about valuing and rewarding the way research as a process is conducted, and making open science as part of that is, of course, very important. And that, of course, is not just about the open access, but also having the data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It's about the entire workflow of research, the way research is conducted.
Thank you very much. Maybe last question, and then I have a question also, okay. So please.
So just a comment, so this deal looks very nice. It's a deal, it seems to work in Germany, though I mean, Munich universities are not very happy about it, but globally it looks well. But I would pledge for another model which exists, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world. There are these national professional societies like the American Math Society and so on. They publish top journals. These journals are normally cheaper than the journals published by the commercial publishers, because they have other sources. They have the fees, membership fees. AMS has this Mathscinet, which earns them a lot of money, and so therefore they can be cheaper. So I would pledge for if the government decides to change the model or support libraries or pay the publishers using these transfer contracts and so on, to also not forget about these professional publishers, which actually are very important for the community, and I think they guarantee the good level of the publication. In the AMS, you don't have to bother about the quality of refereeing. There was never a problem there, unlike in other publishers. Thank you.
I just want to remark, I think a remark was also made earlier, that some of these publishers, Oxford University Publishing, AIPP, they're not easier to deal with than the big commercial publishers, because also they use a lot of their income that they get also to support meetings, to give fellowships and so on, right? Not necessarily only for publishing. So in that sense, they're not much easier. And on the other hand, Wiley, so we have the deal contract with Wiley. Wiley represents I don't know how many societies, right? And so they actually internally also have to deal with their societies. The chemists in Germany, the German Chemical Society, was very critical about the Wiley contract. The chemists in general are more critical about open access than physicists are, right? And so they were very, very critical, but now now we go in the 5th year of the Wiley contract, they're actually extremely happy because they see it actually works in this model that we have. In any case, we're always looking for ways to improve it, the model that we have, and the deal model that there is in Germany, it might be difficult to implement in other countries, although Germany is also a complicated country with the many provinces and the many different organizations. It was not so easy to get this going.
Okay, very good. We are ending, Martin.
Well, I believe we are at the end, but I wanted to ask you, the people here. We heard about the deal. The deal consortium was supported by the agreement between government parties, between SPD and the Green. In their coalition agreement, they promoted deal consortium. In Czech Republic, we have nothing like that. We don't even have any strategy. So we need your help, that you push the people that you could to help us, because we are, you know, we started from scratch. In 2017, we had nothing in this country as to open access. And now we have 14 transformative agreements with, well, at least Wiley and Springer and blah, blah, blah. You heard the names. So this is not too good, too far, but yeah, without this help, we can't. And the other thing is the two pockets. That the money is coming from the current spending of the libraries and from the grants of researchers. And we need to create a something like publishing budget at the university, at the Academy of Sciences, taking both those parts in consideration. So that's it. Thank you.
So we decided to create a group which would write a conclusion from these 3 debates which we had, and that will be hopefully accepted as an official document of the Learn Society. So hopefully it can help in this effort. But we have to finish. But since I directed this discussion, I have the last question for all panelists, and it is. If you have considered or saw some other than peaceful, so rather disruptive or revolutionary transition to open access. Did you ever consider somehow to make a revolution or to make some disruptive transformation?
I can only say that I know that many plans have been around to completely change the publication system, but I just think it is not realistic. And so the approach that we followed is the system that we have might not be ideal.
Yeah.
But it is working, has been working for a long time. We want to make improvements on that system. We want the copyrights with the authors. We want to understand what's being paid for. We want that the material is more available to others as well. And the changes that are made are such that it's not disruptive in the system, because I think then you might do too much harm to the system. But implement it this way. Then we got a lot of criticism that we worked only with the big publishers, because those are the sharks in the title of your colloquium here today. But if we don't talk to the sharks, we will never get anywhere. Right? Yeah. So if we really want to make a change of the system and get a certain percentage of open access that it really counts, we will have to do this with the sharks. We will have to learn to speak their language. And in the end, we can only do it together. So it's an interesting process. In the negotiations, you start kind of as real opposition and fighting on the table. But in the end, if you have a deal and you want to, if you have a contract and you want to implement it, you really need to then do this together. And also from the side of the publishers, there are a lot of risk and a lot of things that are unclear what this will mean for their business and so on. And so I think this is as disruptive as it could be.
Thank you. Vinciane, do you want to comment on it?
No, I think it's good to indeed be realistic here. One thing that I wanted just to insist on is the diversity of open access routes and pathways. So there are many different ways, and institutions and researchers, individual researchers, have more power than what they think in order to make the change on a daily basis. So for instance, copyright should stay with the authors. They are, as part of Plan S, there is the rights retention strategy. It's a very simple strategy for individual authors when they submit a manuscript. to just put like, it's 2 lines or 3 lines, and you have it all ready made from the Plan S website with all tutorials and what is it that you can do with this. So this really is a simple way to just keep the copyright, and you inform the publisher at the moment of submitting your manuscripts, so that any rule that they would have would not override what you had said before. So this is a simple way. There is the green open access. There are many different ways to improve and advance open access. So I'll stop there. I think that we should really focus on all the different tools that we have at hand and use them collectively. Thank you.
And Jiří and Martin?
Just comment to the disruption of the system. The licensing center, we are a service, so we are not the decision makers, the strategic decision makers. We do tactical decisions, we do the hard work in the background to be prepared for negotiation, but we need the strategic goals coming from not from top, but from the scientists. These are the clients, the final beneficiaries. And so we do not act against the will of the scientists, and we have not received any clear incentive, just break it. We don't want it this way. All scientists, they wanted to preserve their precious journals, but they wanted to publish open access there, and the transformative agreement was the only reasonable way how to do it without upsetting all the people here. So that's a clear message to us. So we do not decide which way to go. We have to listen and we have to discuss with you, I mean with the authors and with the scientists, which way to go. If you say just shut off Elsevier, then let's do it. But
thank you. Martin, do you want to comment?
I would say that was enough.
Perfect. Yes, so so that's it. That's the end. Let me thank again very much to the 4 speakers and for all of you for listening and the questions. And yeah, let's hope it will help. These discussions help to somehow advance the whole business.